Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
Uncovered a domestic cell.
Ako peya. Kahit kung may mata, ay kuda.
Is the shooter armed? Terrorist is armed. Stop! It's only a boy!
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 469. Out now in Australian cinemas is Muru, a searing response to the real-life events of 2007, which saw New Zealand police invoke new anti-terrorism powers and launch a raid on the Tuhoe people in the Ruatoki region. An exploration into the tense relationship between the state, the police, and the Maori people. Muru also marks the latest film from director Tearepa Kahi, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Tearepa, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm good. I'm great. It's great to be here in Brisbane. Just got off the plane from Busan. So sharing this in Australia today with you is awesome.
It is awesome. I mean, the movie's out nationwide right now, and it's such an interesting movie. And what I really found kind of fascinating with it was a little caveat at the start of the film, which says, you know, this is not a recreation, but a response. And essentially what Muru is like you take the launching pad of that 2007 raid to kind of explore other issues that are also going on in New Zealand at the time. I'm curious, though, was that always the creative choice at the start of this process, or is that something that kind of happens afterwards? Like you maybe do a first draft or a second draft and you think, you know, I think maybe we can explore other issues here, other boundaries as well, and go into deeper issues with this movie.
You want me to reveal all my secrets off the bat? Okay, I'm prepared to do that. No, my background is New Zealand history, documentaries. I'm all about being faithful. The first versions and scripts of Muru were very faithful chronologically. And, you know, I lifted every stone. I know way too much about this event and the different people involved and the training required and the evidence presented. But I was invited by Papa Tame to attend a meeting inside the village of Ruatoki. And at that stage, I was very confident in the script that I put down. And one of the aunties there said, "Boy, is this about one day?" And I faithfully stood up and said, "Yes, I've nailed it. Here it all is." And she said, "What a waste. What a waste." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "How can you tell our story if it's all only about one day when the government have been doing this, taking this course of action against us for over a century?"
Mm.
And it really did force a rethink. And it's always a tricky ground when you reach for allegory based on historic threads, try and weave that into a cinematic universe that people can still recognize as being part of contemporary life, because we're talking about events on a specific day, 15th of October, 2007, and still be focused on telling the truth. But with this type of intervention from Tuhoe in the community, the rethink really, it allowed for way more depth and cultural contexting. And I think that's where we put some time in terms of the characters and bringing them to life. So you will see a response, but it's not a response to one day. It's a response to a century of a broken relationship between the government and Tuhoe. And the next steps, and why we've decided to tell it this way and why I listened to this auntie with such intent is because Muru is a prevention to ensure that this never happens again.
Mm. When it comes to the movie, you have it pretty much told through the eyes of this one character named Sergeant Taffy, who's played by Cliff Curtis. And he's a really interesting character in that he himself is a police officer, a sergeant of the community in Tuhoe. And it's interesting in that there seems to be a crossroads for him as a man and as a person of the community. On one end, he represents the badge, but on the other end, he represents the community and his family as well. It's an interesting dynamic to play with. When you wrote that character and you presented it to Cliff Curtis, who plays the role, he's such an excellent actor and so excellent in the movie. What was the conversations like with him trying to thread that dynamic between this man of the law, but also this man who represents his people and his family as well?
Yeah, another great question. Cliff and I have known each other for a very long time. He's been a huge supporter of the short films. He was an EP and helped out on a number of documentaries I've done. But having that personal relationship actually makes it tougher because this guy is in demand by the biggest names in Hollywood and around the world. And you can sort of try and rest on our relationship. It'll be fine. I'll get Cliff. Well, actually, the only way to get Cliff is to present him with the best, most complex part, and through a dilemma that is real. So the moral dilemma for Taffy came through understanding of the moral dilemma that a lot of our Indigenous people in positions of influence and responsibility must face in a daily, as part of their daily operations. And we had a great time working out not just the arc, but the understanding that even though this is a community cop, he's never going to have a gun in his holster. We're never going to see the police HQ. He's a school bus driver. He is a man of his community who is just, a blind spot is created because of his focus on his ailing father, which is a real relationship. The bigger context to this is that the Deputy Commissioner of the New Zealand Police watched this film 2 weeks ago with his wife, picked up his phone after the screening and rung Tame Iti up himself and told Tame that he identified as Sergeant Taffy and that what he wants to do is to organise a convention with Tame to come and speak to the New Zealand Police Force in November. And so that was the grand plan, I guess, for Cliff and I in terms of detailing the moves of Taffy, because he is a real person. The dilemma is a real dilemma.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. the world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. It's really interesting these days, especially I know this event that the movie depicts happened 15 years ago, but the last few years especially, they really brought to the fore the nature of policing, especially like in the States, of course. And I've over the last years, I've watched a lot of movies from there and spoken to different filmmakers and documentarians dealing with these type of issues as well. And a lot of times it comes down to with policing, how there needs to be different modes of policing to handle different situations. You can't all be all just charging, guns blazing kind of thing. And it's really interesting in this movie where Taffy says to the character Gallagher, who played so great by Jay Ryan, he's like, why don't I get everyone together, have some coffee, we have some cake, let's sit down, let's talk about it. And that could have resolved so many issues, but that didn't happen. The hope is, I hope, that in the conversations between the police sergeant you just talked about and Tamir, is that maybe in the future something like that can happen to resolve issues as opposed to what happened back in 2007. I mean, is that the hope that you're having as well, that in case, heaven forbid, something like this would happen again, that that will be the approach that police would take in this time or the next time?
Thank you for that. The point of this film is prevention and understanding. And I always believe that if you have a question, you don't need to invent more barriers or more reasons not to knock on the door when the jug is boiling and they're ready for you. The way that we've invented enemies and the way that we continue to invent enemies must be very taxing on people, and it causes and inflicts real drama. So how do we spin this around and connect? You know, this valley is always open to us. There can always be questions, but, you know, questions demand listening as well as asking the question. And I hope that it just brings, this is an entertaining, heart-wrenching roller coaster ride of a film, but I really hope that new conversations start after this and that everyone has the strength to knock on any door knowing that it doesn't need to be ram-raided. It's actually open.
I'm really curious about filming in Ruatoki for this movie. 15 years have gone past since those events, but there's even things even before that. You have the raids in 1916. You reference a shooting in 2000 as well that happened, and there's like many other kind of events as well that's been happening, as your auntie said in that one time over the last 100 years or so, more maybe. When it comes to that land, filming in that area and recreating some of these scenes again, can you feel the ghosts of the past weighing heavily on your shoulders as you're making these scenes come to life once again?
Absolutely. There's real weight there because 1916 is still full, there's still HD, 8K resolution of what happened in 1916, let alone 2007. And the events are burnt into generations of people within the community, which means that there is a big undertaking and responsibility of bringing it to life and not shying away from it, knowing that the worst thing we could do is water it down or ignore it altogether. What's actually eventuated back home with this is that it's allowed other people to release their stories, their feelings, and be able to share for the first time. And that unlocking leads to new conversations as well. So it's been a powerful experience. You're talking about the ghosts of the past. There's no past.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah. It's a really good point. The title of the film, Muru, from what I've read, a definition of that is forgive or forgiveness. And it's really interesting. I was listening to a interview you did at the Toronto Film Festival. It was yourself, it was Jay and Cliff was talking about how it's forgiving but not forgetting. And it's really important to make that distinction here. It is about not necessarily letting go, but not holding on so tight to the reins of the past that it kind of suffocates the future. And I think that's a kind of real kind of thing that you feel in this movie. Is that something that you hope as well, that maybe that forgiveness would kind of bring about not closure necessarily, but maybe some type of, I don't know, breath for a new life or a new future that, so that it's an even more brighter future than compared to the darker past.
Absolutely. What Cliff said is right on. And the other aspect to Muru is that when something has gone wrong, there is a process that must put it right. And so the next cup of tea that we have after Muru is the most important cup of tea. That next conversation and how we see each other for the first time, for the next time, is the most important aspect here.
I think it's really important lessons for people to learn, not only in regards to the people in the movie, and also, but I think it's a lot of these themes are really kind of global in nature as well. And I think it's really important people take on some of these themes and learn the lessons. And I think that's what I really love about cinema. Sometimes you get stories told that you never heard of before. Like I was trying to remember back in 2007, if I remembered this story. Of course, I'm across the pond in Australia, so maybe I might not have remembered as well as you do. But there's other stories as well. When you watch movies like 12 Years a Slave or Hacksaw Ridge or movies like that, it's really important not to forget about the stories of the past. And cinema does that. Do you have any moments in your life where you watched a movie that was based on like a historical record that you never knew about the story before, but it had an impact on you as not only as a filmmaker, but as a person? Because I'm sure as yourself, as a storyteller, that maybe there would have been some of those occurrences that happened to you.
Well, this is why it's so exciting to be a storyteller today, because globally, we're more connected to each other, and being moved inside the cinema by other people's cultural cinematic visions is, that's what feeds us and that's what fuels us. Being able to bring to light that little slither of something that other people didn't know anything about. I think it's important also in that space to be unapologetic in bringing it to life and not needing to apologize and not knowing something and having, just allowing it to be yourself to receive what has been offered to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're describing happens to me all the time, and I'm very lucky.
Yeah. So for everyone out there listening, out now in Australian cinemas is Muru. I really recommend people check out this film. I think it's a really important movie to watch, and really is important that people take on the history, take on the themes, and just, watch this response to this event and just learn lessons from it. I think it's really important everyone does. And Tearepa, thank you so very much for your time today. I hope you enjoy your tour around Australia. I know you're in Queensland tonight. You're going to be in Melbourne and Sydney over the next few nights as well, doing Q&A. So I really do hope you enjoy that, and really interested to see what the response is from people watching this film. I think it's going to be really emotional and really interesting to see. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
That's great. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.